Sandhan. All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Good afternoon, dear students. Myself Sanjay Parekh and my colleague Jay Bargi. Today we are going to deliver a lecture on anaerobiosis and anaerobic cultivations. I am from Sri Ramakrishna Institute of Computer Education and Applied Sciences, Surat. Friends, as you know, our Earth atmosphere is consist of 20% of molecular oxygen. However, in the primordial period of Earth, there was an anoxygenic condition, and almost 1 billion year bacteria and archaea have evolved within anaerobic conditions, and thus they have developed their lifestyles to survive in the absence of oxygen, and they have developed a kind of mechanism in which where they prepare their energy, they synthesize the energy from under anaerobic conditions. So today we shall go through how this anaerobic life pertains in this planet and what are the other aspects of anaerobiosis we will see. So friends, on the basis of molecular oxygen requirement, we can broadly categorize all the microorganisms as well as other organisms into major three groups. That is, as you can see in the slide, aerobes, microaerophiles and anaerobes. Aerobes, in which once again we will have a two category, what we can say obligate aerobes and facultative aerobes, or you can say facultative anaerobes. Now obligate aerobes are a kind of organisms who synthesize or who prepare their energy by means of respiration. Thus they strictly require oxygen for their growth, whereas facultative aerobes, or you can say a facultative anaerobes, do not require oxygen as a final electron acceptor in energy generation mechanisms. In the presence of oxygen they can grow, or in the absence of oxygen they have developed a kind of mechanisms where they can survive. Another second category of organisms, what we call microaerophiles. These are the organisms which require oxygen, which requires a molecular oxygen for energy generations, but at a reduced concentrations. So this is all about a microaerophiles. Now the another third category, what we can say is anaerobes. Here once again we will have a two category, obligate anaerobes or stringent anaerobes. These are the kind of organisms which do not have a mechanisms to utilize oxygen. Another way, their oxygen is detrimental for them. They cannot detoxify the toxic derivatives of oxygen, and that's why their growth is hampered under the presence of oxygen. What we call them astringent anaerobes. And the subcategories of anaerobes is aerotolerant anaerobes. Now these aerotolerant anaerobes, they do not utilize molecular oxygen for energy generation. However, they are insensitive to molecular oxygens, and thus whether oxygen is present or not, their growth is unaffected. So in that category, as you know, that molecular oxygen have a low solubility in water, and that's why water containing regions or water having regions in the nature are there is a low solubility of oxygen, and that's why whatever organisms other than anaerobic organisms are present within the environment or in nature, they will utilize the available oxygen by means of respiration in exaggerately so that there is a presence of some of the unexotic habitats in our natures. As you can see in these slides, there are muds, bogs and marshes, waterlogged soils, intestinal tract of animals, sewage sludge and deep surface of earth. These are the kind of habitats which are anaerobic one, and these are the regions where we can see the presence of anaerobes or aerotolerant organisms as we have just described. Now, on the basis of stringent anaerobes, as I told you that organisms do not require oxygen. Specifically when we are talking about obligate anaerobes, then there are major three kinds of organisms: bacteria, there are some of the fungi and protozoa. In case of bacteria, a well-known group of organisms which are considered as an obligate anaerobes are Clostridium genus. These are gram-positive non-spore forming rods which are anaerobic organisms. Now, besides this, archaea are known for a well-known anaerobes. In that case, we are having a Methanosarcina species. Other eubacteria are Peptostreptococcus, Veillonella species, and as I told you that there are some of the fungi as well as protozoa are well known anaerobes. So anaerobic fungi is Neocalimestic species, and the example of anaerobic protozoa is Trichonympha species. So these are the obligate anaerobes which are likely to be present in the environment and that specific regions which we have just mentioned. Now, on the basis of organisms' response to their molecular oxygen, if we want to categorize the bacteria, then we can categorize the bacteria by knowing their oxygen requirement, and for that a commonly medium which is employed for a oxygen class of microorganisms is thioglycolate broth. Later on when I shall discuss about the cultivation of anaerobic organisms, we shall go through the principle of this medium, but here how one can consider the oxygen class of microorganisms. For that, as I told you, usually a thioglycolate broth is employed. Now in this thioglycolate broth there is a generation of oxygen gradient across the medium, and as you can see in this slide, we will have a oxygen or oxic zone as well as anoxic zone. Now in aerobic organisms, if we will grow in this medium, then usually the organisms which are growing are shown in this slide with a black dots. Just consider these black dots as a colony. So aerobic organisms are usually growing on a upper segment which is more oxic, whereas anaerobic organisms, as we know, they are unable to tolerate the oxygen tension, and that's why usually they are growing at the bottom. Whereas facultative anaerobic organisms, they usually shows their presence throughout the medium. However, the more number of organisms are found to be present in the oxic zone. Besides this, microaerophilic organisms, these are the organisms which required oxygen for their energy generation, but the oxygen which they required is in a lower concentration like 2 to 10%, and that's why microaerophilic organisms will grow at subsurface level, just a level below oxic zone. And aerotolerant anaerobes, these are the organisms which are insensitive to the oxygen, and that's why they are found to be growing throughout the medium. However, their growth is not better in an oxic zone. They are found to be more commonly present in case of bottom of a tube. Now, so that was all about the oxygen classes of microorganisms. Now let's talk about some of the toxic forms of oxygen, and we shall understand that why our anaerobes, the organisms which we are going to discuss today, are unable to grow in oxygens. Friends, as you know that oxygen is in ground state, which is presence in a nature, what we call a triplet oxygen. But electronic configuration of this triplet oxygen are found to be toxic to the living forms. One of the electrical configuration is what we call a singlet oxygen. Now this singlet oxygen is a high energy form of oxygen, and this singlet oxygen can easily damage the biological component of the cell, and that's why it is toxic. Besides this, superoxide radicals, hydroxyl radicals and hydrogen peroxide, these are the derivatives of oxygens which are generated during a respiration process. Though anaerobes do not perform a kind of respiration which usually exhibited by aerobic organisms. So here even we know that the flavonoids and some sulfur containing proteins, these are found to be present in virtually all living cells, whether the organisms are aerobes or anaerobes. So these flavonoid compounds also oxidize the material and ultimately generates toxic forms of oxygen, what we call a superoxide. As you can see some of the toxic forms of oxygen in this slide. Here, besides superoxide radicals, hydroxyl radicals is also having toxicity towards the biological components, and that's why these forms of oxygen, what we call a derivatives forms of oxygen, are found to be detrimental to the growth of microorganisms, and that's why these toxic forms of oxygen cannot support the growth of microorganisms, and that's why organisms are hampered in the presence of such toxic elements. So now the question arises that how our aerobic organisms can tolerate such a toxic forms of oxygen. As I told you, in a process of evolution, though early microorganisms and archaea, they have been evolved up to 1 billion years in anoxic environment. However, majority of eukaryotes and animals have been evolved in oxic environment. Then during the process of evolution, to deal with such a toxic forms of oxygen, these organisms, I am talking about aerobic organisms, have evolved a kind of enzymes which ultimately helps them to protect against the toxic derivatives of oxygen. So let's see some of these enzymes which has been evolved by aerobic organisms and which ultimately helps to protect the organisms against the toxic derivatives. In that category, one of the enzyme is catalase. Now these enzymes can, as you can see in this slide, these enzymes can easily broken down hydrogen peroxide. Now as I told you, three important toxic derivatives: superoxide radicals, hydroxyl radicals, both are strong oxidants which can oxidize the biological component and ultimately cause a harmful effect to the microorganisms, and the another one is a hydrogen peroxide. However, as compared to previous two, this hydrogen peroxide is not having a kind of that much detrimental effect as the previous one. So this hydrogen peroxide can be broken down by enzyme catalase into water and oxygen. Another is a peroxidase enzymes. Once again, these enzymes act upon hydrogen peroxide, but the difference between catalase and peroxidase enzyme is that peroxidase enzymes require NADH for its activity, and the product which is going to be produced is not water and oxygen, means oxygen is not generated, but instead of that only water is generated. Now besides catalase and peroxidase, the third enzymes which are playing an important role is a superoxide dismutase. Now this superoxide dismutase will act upon two superoxide radical, and that superoxide radical will be converted into hydrogen peroxide, and thus usually in aerobic organisms, this hydrogen peroxide are further acted by catalase, and that's why usually superoxide dismutase and catalase combination, this system is usually found to be present in aerobic organisms. Such systems are found to be absent in anaerobes. Initially it was believed this might be one of the reason that why anaerobic organisms cannot survive under oxygen pressure. However, even such type of disposal of superoxide radicals have been detected in one of the thermophilic archaea, Pyrococcus furiosus. Now in this organism, instead of superoxide dismutase, there is a presence of enzyme what we call superoxide reductase. Now both these enzymes, dismutase and reductase, act upon superoxide radicals, but superoxide will produce oxygens, whereas superoxide reductase do not produce oxygen. So this ultimately reflects that why superoxide reductase is found to be present in anaerobic organisms, because this superoxide reductase will produce not oxygen, a molecular oxygen, and that is why these organisms are not exposed to molecular oxygen. Thus superoxide reductase is present in anaerobic organisms. So this is how anaerobic organisms lacking such kind of systems, and that's why they cannot easily tolerate the toxic forms of oxygen, and that's why they cannot survive in the presence of oxygen. Whereas aerobic organisms, as I told you, in a process of evolution, they have developed these systems which ultimately helps them. So that's all, that is all about the kind of mechanism which operates in aerobic organisms against the toxic forms of oxygen. Now let's see how such enzyme systems are distributed in different group of microorganisms which we have earlier classified on the basis of the organism's requirement for oxygen. So as you can see in this slide, this different 5 groups of organisms in which such enzyme systems are found to be present. So now friends, let's go through how then, if organisms are not required by the anaerobic organisms, then what mechanisms operated in anaerobic organisms that ultimately helps them to produce the energy. So how energy production or conservation is occurred in anaerobes. Here in anaerobes, they produce energy in the form of ATP by reoxidizing NADH and some of the reduced compounds which are generated during oxidation. So this reoxidizing of NADH and reduced compound will be carried out in anaerobes by 2 different mechanisms, what we call anaerobic respiration and fermentation. This is the 2 mechanism which operates in anaerobic organisms for energy generation. Now when we are talking about anaerobic respiration, then anaerobic respiration can be defined as you can see in this slide, the ability to use electron acceptors other than oxygen to perform a membrane associated oxidation reduction reaction for generating energy during anaerobic cell growth. As you know, aerobic organisms produce energy by a means of respiration, what we call oxygen or oxidative respirations. Now in oxygen respirations, the energy generation process is occurred by a transfer of electron through electron transfer chain or electron transfer system, a system which is found to be present in the membrane of microorganisms. Now electron transfer systems usually operated to transfer the electrons from electron donor 2 electron acceptor. Usually the electron donors which are employed are having low potential, whereas the electron acceptors are high potential molecules, and that's why the electron is transferred from within the membrane through these proteins. Now, as I told you, the process of electron transfer is mediated by number of enzymes as well as number of lipophilic molecules, because the whole system is operated within the bilayer membrane made up of lipid. Here, students, the electron transfer system usually comprises of two enzymes. As you can see in this slide, there is a presence of dehydrogenases and oxidoreductases. Now, dehydrogenases and oxidoreductases will transport the electron with the aid of some of the proteins and lipophilic molecules. When we are talking about anaerobic organisms, then the lipophilic molecules which are found to be present are what we call quinones. Now, these quinones which are found to be present in anaerobic organisms are menaquinones, whereas in aerobic organisms ubiquinones are found to be present. So, when the electrons are transported from electron donor to electron acceptor, the energy which is released, this energy is used to transport the proton from inside cell to outside across the cell membrane. Now, this transportation of proton ultimately generates a kind of electrical potential due to change in pH and proton gradient. The combined value of change in pH and proton gradient is known as proton motive force. Now, this proton motive force is used to generate energy in the form of ATP, where the ADP are combined with inorganic phosphate with the help of membrane bound enzyme. One of the important membrane bound enzyme which involved in this reaction is ATP synthase. So, thus the energy generation take place in organisms. Now, if we are talking about anaerobic organisms, then the only difference between aerobic and anaerobic organism is that in aerobic organisms usually oxygen is act as a final electron acceptor, whereas in anaerobic organisms, I am not talking about all, some anaerobic organisms in which the final electron acceptor is other than oxygen, and thus when the final electron acceptor is oxygen, that process is known as oxygen respiration, whereas in absence of oxygen, when other organic molecules act as a final electron acceptor, then that process is referred as anaerobic respiration. So, now students, let us see how anaerobic respiration, in which the final electron acceptors are found to be present. Here nitrate, sulfate, fumarate and carbon dioxide may act as a final electron acceptor in anaerobic respiration. So, let us see in this next slide the example of anaerobic respiration, where the first is a nitrate reduction. Now, this nitrate reduction, where the nitrate may be reduced to either elemental nitrogen gas or it may be reduced to ammonia, and thus we will have a two class of organism, what we call denitrifiers and nitrate ammonifiers. Another is a fumarate reduction. Now, this fumarate reduction will reduce fumarate to succinate. Now, this reduction of fumarate to succinate can be operated by two different pathways, acrylate pathway or fumarate pyruvate succinate pathway. Now, this acrylate pathway is found to be operated in Clostridium species, whereas pyruvate succinate pathway is found to be operated in Propionobacterium species. Now, besides a fumarate reduction, there is a trimethyl alanine oxide reduction. Now, this trimethyl alanine oxide is found to be present as a kind of osmotic balance material in many marine fishes. Means this many marine fishes are producing this trimethyl oxide as a osmotic balance material, and this are reduced to trimethyl alanine by organisms like Vibrio species. Besides this, there is also a reduction of salinate. Now, this salinate is reduced by Hafnia and Clostridium species. Once again, a kind of anaerobic organisms. Selenate is reduced to selenite, and selenite too, it has been further reduced to elemental selenium. Now, this elemental selenium is insoluble in water, and thus the organisms which I have mentioned, Hafnia and Clostridium species, can be used as in a process of bioremediation if either water or soil has been contaminated with selenate. So, that's all. That is all about anaerobic respiration. The most important which is still remaining is a sulfate reduction. As we know that sulfate has been reduced to either hydrogen sulfide or elemental sulfur gas, and this reduction is mediated by strictly anaerobic organisms. Another mode of energy generation which has been observed in anaerobic organism is a fermentation. This is also a mechanism by which organisms generates energy under anaerobic condition, where this process of fermentation is differs from anaerobic respiration in two aspects. One of the aspect is that where the ATP generation is taking place by substrate phosphorylation. Substrate level phosphorylation, this mechanism is operated for generation of energy. And second thing, anaerobic respiration process occurs in a cell membrane, whereas a fermentation process is occurs, or that substrate level phosphorylation is occurs in a cytosol. So, that is what the basic difference which differentiate both this process, that is anaerobic respiration and fermentation. Now, in fermentation there are different types of final electron acceptors are required, because whatever electrons are generated in oxidation process, that electrons should be reduced by some, that electron should be used to reduce some of the metabolites. Now, in anaerobic respiration, the metabolites which are used are exogenously present outside the cell, as we have said that oxygen. But here oxygen is not used by the organism as a final electron acceptor. The whole process occurs within cytoplasm, and that's why organism has to produce some of the metabolites by following their own biosynthetic pathway to convert that electrons into these metabolites. So, these metabolites which are used are known as electron sink. So, let's go through the different types of fermentation which are observed among anaerobic organisms. Is propionate fermentations, acetate fermentations, lactate fermentations, butanediol fermentation and butyrate fermentation. This fermentation is usually carried out by some of the facultative anaerobic organisms as well as strictly anaerobic organisms. So, this is how, by following two different mechanisms, anaerobic organisms generates energy which can be utilized by them for different purposes. That was all about the biochemistry aspects of anaerobiosis. Now, we will see that how the organisms specifically anaerobic organisms can be cultivated. Cultivation of anaerobic organism is usually achieved by employing a media, the media usually we used to employ for aerobic organisms. However, the basic difference between the media which has been employed for the cultivation of anaerobe and aerobe is in sense of that in anaerobic cultivation pre-reduced media are used. Now this pre-reduced media are differs in three different aspects. Number one, they are rich in organic content. Organic molecules are found to be more present. Number two, there is a presence of some reducing agents like cysteine and thioglycolate. And number three, in the media itself there is a presence of redox indicator like resazurine. So pre-reduced media, as I told you, are commonly used for the cultivation of anaerobic organisms. Now these anaerobic organisms are usually grown in a pre-reduced media. Now how this pre-reduced media are usually prepared? Usually by following an appropriate composition of a medium. The mediums are allowed to boil. So this boiling process will driven off the excess oxygen which are present into the medium, and then in that medium oxygen free nitrogen is bubbled and the tubes or the plates are kept. Then these media are sterilized in an autoclave, and after autoclaving these media are inoculated by anaerobic organisms. But while inoculation, a care has to be taken that there is a minimum oxygen exposure occurs to the medium, and that's why a more commonly used technique what we call a rolled tube method. As you can see in this next slide, this rolled tube method in which anaerobic medium, of course a solid medium, is thinly layered in the inner surface of a tube, and then these tubes are kept on a motor, and with the help of loop this organisms or the culture which you want to inoculate is inoculated, and at the time of inoculation carbon dioxide is supplied with the help of cannula, and thus the inoculation of organism is carried out, and once the inoculation is accomplished then the media are kept for incubation. Now students, we know that usually incubation is accomplished in an appropriate chamber what we used to call a bacteriological incubator, but bacteriological incubator which we usually use for the cultivation of aerobic organisms are not applicable over here, and that's why we need to provide anoxic environment, and that's why there are some systems available by which the anaerobic organisms can be grown. So let's see one of the system what we call anaerobic jar. Now in anaerobic jar, usually a sealed jar which can be evacuated to remove the oxygen presence into the jar, or the jar can be filled with hydrogen and nitrogen or carbon dioxide, and thus the oxygen has been reduced from the anaerobic jar. Nowadays the more commonly used technique what we call anaerobic jar having gas pack system are used for cultivation of anaerobic organisms. As you can see in the given slide, a gas pack system is usually consist of a gas pack envelope. Now this gas pack envelope usually consists of two chemicals, that is sodium borohydride and sodium bicarbonate. Now sodium borohydride and sodium bicarbonate to which water is added, and that ultimately generates a chemical reaction that produce hydrogen and carbon dioxide. Now the production of hydrogen will react with the available oxygen within the jar in the presence of pallidum. As you can see in this slide, the lead is consist of a pallidum, and this pallidum will act as a catalyst. Now this pallidum will catalyze the reaction of hydrogen and oxygen and produce a water. This is how the oxygen is removed from the anaerobic jar and the organisms are cultivated under anoxic environment. To provide anoxic environment, some other systems have been developed, like scapnophilic and fastidious anaerobic organisms are preferred to grow in a carbon dioxide concentrations around 5 to 10%, and for that a candle jar can be used. Now if one has to transport the anaerobic cultures, then nowadays a commercially carbon dioxide generating packets are available. This carbon dioxide generating packets, in which the once again a gas pack like system is present that will carried out the reduction of oxygen. Now that is all about the anaerobic jar, but students, think of those stringent anaerobes which cannot grow even in the little bit of concentration of oxygen. Then to grow them we need to have a complete oxygen free environment, and that has been provided by either a glow box, you can say a glow box, or anaerobic chamber or anaerobic box. As you can see in this next slide, there is a anaerobic chamber. Now right to the anaerobic chamber there is a kind of transport system, or you can say a kind of a system in which you can transport your material. So there is a airlock systems. Here you have to insert the media or the cultures which you want to carry out inoculation, and then you have to open the inner wall of the chamber, and then you can transfer the media into the main chamber. Now within the main chamber there is also a presence of pallidum catalyst, and the complete environment is made up of hydrogen, nitrogen and carbon dioxide. So hydrogen, nitrogen and carbon dioxide, in which there is a presence of circulator which circulates the air which is present into the chamber, and thus any traces of oxygen, if it is present in the medium, that will react with the hydrogen in the presence of palladium, and what it will be converted into water. And with the help of glow pot, as you can see in this another diagram, in the help of a glow pot the process of inoculation can be accomplished under completely anoxic environment, and after inoculation even the medias can be kept within the chamber. There is a provision of incubator in which anoxic condition is mentioned. So this is how one can cultivate the organisms, specifically anaerobic organisms, by utilizing such facilities. So friends, here we have discussed how anaerobic organisms can be cultivated and its biochemistry of anaerobiosis. Now my colleague Mr. Jay Bargi will talk about the use of anaerobic organisms in our day-to-day life.
Dear students, good afternoon. My colleague Sanjay Bhai has explained basic biology of anaerobic organism. He has also explained how anaerobic organisms can be cultivated. But a question may be asked, why to study, why to cultivate all these anaerobic organisms? What is the advantage of our knowledge about cultivation of anaerobic organism? In order to answer all these questions, we need to study how anaerobic organisms are affecting our day-to-day life. Anaerobic organisms are affecting our day-to-day life in variety of different aspects. Before we study all those aspects, let's have a revision what Sanjay Bhai has already told about where these anaerobic organisms actually are living. As you can see in slide, anaerobic organisms are living majorly in the environment where water replaces air and thus oxygen concentration is being limited. This includes muds, marshes, any of the waterlogged soils, subsurface areas and deep marine habitats. As we go deep into away from the surface, then the oxygen concentration diminishes, and for that reason subsurface soils and deep marine habitats are hugely anoxic. Besides this, intestinal tract of animals also harbor anaerobic organisms. As you are aware, intestinal tract of animals is a long tubular structure, and the far end, the distal end of intestinal tubule will be essentially anoxic due to the activity of aerobic organisms which consume the oxygen available. So the distal end of animal intestine is generally anaerobic, which supports the growth of anaerobic organism. Now all these examples of anaerobic habitats what we have discussed by far now essentially are the examples which are natural, but there are some man-made anaerobic environments also. Two crucial man-made environments which are essentially anaerobic I would like to emphasize on includes first solid waste piles. Now these are huge piles of solid waste. At the core of such waste piles, conditions are anaerobic because oxygen is not being exposed. The second example is packaged foods. Packaged food items, because they are sealed, again oxygen is not available, so decaying waste piles as well as canned or packaged foods are essentially anoxic. Once we have studied that organisms are living in these anoxic habitats, now let's discuss what they actually do in these anoxic habitats. See, in nature, all these anoxic habitats are not having pure culture of bacteria, rather a mixed population of organisms is growing over there. And all these organisms constitute what we call a food chain in the natural habitat. As you can see in next slide, decomposing organisms can decompose macromolecules like polysaccharides, proteins and nucleic acids in order to produce monomers like carbohydrate, amino acids, purines, pyrimidines, etc. These monomeric compounds, simple compounds, are further consumed by aerobic fermenters, aerobic organisms as well as fermenters to organic acids, alcohols, hydrogen and carbon dioxide gas. All these organic acids can further be metabolized to the simple organic acids like acetic acid and hydrogen and carbon dioxide gas. And lastly, all these compounds are converted into a mixture of methane and carbon dioxide by a group of organisms which are essentially anaerobic called methanogens. What is the usefulness of all these anaerobic organisms? See, anaerobic cultivation is something, a practice that has been performed by mankind since few thousand years. For example, industrial production of wine and beer was performed since many centuries. However, the earlier manufacturers were never aware about the precise control of microorganisms or the biochemistry behind the anaerobic production, and for that reason, the yield of production was essentially low, as well as batch to batch quality of product was different and varying. Now, in present day economy of competition and quality, manufacturers cannot afford low yield or batch variation. So, we need complete control on the cultivation of anaerobic organisms for the production of industrial products. The first such controlled use of anaerobic organism for the production of industrial product was designed by a scientist called Chaim Weizmann, as you can see in slide. That was way back in 1910. He designed this technique for the production of a solvent called acetone. In those days, acetone was further used in order to produce a second chemical called cordite. Now, this cordite was an explosive propellant which was used for explosives, and because Europe was passing through World War in that era, so this cordite was very crucial, was in demand, and because cordite was made by acetone, that's why acetone was in demand. So when Chaim Weizmann designed a technique of large scale production of acetone, it was readily been taken up, and this was the first controlled use of microorganism for the industrial production of any chemical. For that reason, Chaim Weizmann is still considered as father of industrial microbiology. I would like to have a note here that Chaim Weizmann later became the first president of the state of Israel. This was the story of acetone. but the same process, the use of the same organism, Clostridium acetobutylicum, besides acetone, the same process also produces a second chemical called butanol. So as you can see in next slide, besides acetone, you can produce another solvents like butanol as well as ethanol by the anaerobic fermentation process. Here an emphasis has to be given on ethanol because anaerobic cultivation, large scale anaerobic cultivation of ethanol is of great interest nowadays. The reason is ethanol can be used in blend, in mixture of current day fuels like petrol in order to use as biofuel. So as the fossil fuel price, crude oil price rises day by day, we are looking for alternatives, and one of the attractive alternatives is ethanol. For that reason, large scale production, large scale anaerobic production of ethanol is helpful. Another compound of industrial interest which has been made by anaerobic fermentation is biogas. Now, as been said so loosely, biogas is a crude mixture of many gases, chiefly of methane and carbon dioxide, low concentration of hydrogen and some other gases. This mixture of gases has been made in a closed reactor using agricultural waste, animal feed or animal excreta as primary carbon source. In the biogas production, pure culture of anaerobic organism is not being used, rather a mixed consortia has been used, and at the end of process what we will be getting is a crude mixture of gases that essentially contain methane. Methane is the prime, what you can say, functional gas of biogas. In the picture, as you can see, a simple design of household biogas manufacturing plant has been given. This is made of plastic, easy to install, easy to commission and use, and is been feed with the day-to-day garbage of and day-to-day excreta of a single house. As our interest in industrial fermentation increases using anaerobic organisms, this leads us to the newer innovations. Now, just now Sanjay Bhai has discussed different methods of cultivation of anaerobic organisms, but all those methods are cumbersome to the industry. So this has led to some recent advances in the industrial microbiology of anaerobic organism. One example is a patented mixture of enzymes which has been trade named as oxidase. Now this mixture of enzyme oxidase, what it does that when been mixed with the production media in which we are adding the anaerobic organisms, this enzyme readily quenches, readily consumes whatever dissolved oxygen is available. As a result, the conditions are being made anoxic. Further, same enzyme can be absorbed on the surface of plastic plates. The enzyme in the plastic surface will make solid media anaerobic, as you can see in picture, and thus such plates can be readily incubated in simple incubator without been worrying or without been using the anaerobic chambers. Besides making the fine chemicals like solvents, acetone, butanol, anaerobic organisms can also be used for the processing of some food items. As you can see in slide, food items which are being processed with the help of anaerobic fermentation, this includes sauerkraut and some other pickles, bread, sausages and silage. Sauerkraut is finely shredded cabbage which is fermented anaerobically. Sausages are ground minced meat items which are processed again with the anaerobic fermentation. Making of bread, you are aware of this process, use of what you can call baker's yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, is again an anaerobic process. And the last item in the slide, that is silage. It is something new to we people, but this is an animal feed which has been made by anaerobic fermentation of agricultural waste or grasses. So these are few examples of food items which are made by the processing of anaerobic organisms. Now, as we are saying that each coin is having two sides, the other side of the coin is that there are few anaerobic organisms which instead of helping us in processing the food are spoiling our food. So whatever processed foods are packaged in a manner that is not having the oxygen, say our new age Tetra Paks or canned food items, these are subjected to the growth of anaerobic organisms, and these anaerobic organisms rapidly grow in these packaged food items, consuming the organic compounds available in food, and will be producing large amount of gases. So if you have noticed on the Tetra Pak of fruit juice that if you purchase from the supermarket, there is a note over there that don't consume the product if the pack is puffed. So organisms like Clostridium sporogenes, these are the food spoilage organisms which will spoil our food. These are, if you can see in slide, these are few examples of the food items which are made by the anaerobic fermentation. The first picture is of shredded pickle of cabbage, which is known as sauerkraut. The second example is minced meat processed food known as sausages. Day by day, our interest, our concern regarding environmental pollution increases, and due to this increased concern for the environmental pollution, each government has defined few rules, few regulations regarding disposal of pollutants, toxic compounds into the environment. As a result, you cannot dispose any of the pollutant, you cannot dispose any of the toxic compounds directly into the environment. You need to first treat them, and after treatment only these compounds can be discarded into the environment. For the treatment, huge waste treatment plants are being designed, and for the conveniency of treatment, generally solids and liquids are treated separately. The liquid part of waste is, for industries it is known as effluent, for domestic waste it is known as sewage, and the solid part is known as sludge. Now the treatment of solid part is the treatment of sludge. It can be carried out by a variety of different methods, but one of the more popular method is treating this solid waste in large closed containers known as anaerobic digesters. The given slide is giving you one such photograph of 4 large anaerobic digesters which are used for the digestion of sludge of a city in Europe. Yes, governments have designed regulations and rules, and we are not disposing waste into the environment before treatment. But at times, waste gets disposed into the environment unknowingly and accidentally. The challenge here is to treat or remove this waste from the environment before it harms the biological life in the surroundings. If we use biological system, that is either plants or microorganisms, for the disposal of such pollutants from the environment, then this whole approach is known as bioremediation. Now, bioremediation approach in terms of biochemistry can be of 3 types. Either the whole bioremediation will be aerobic in nature, or it will be anaerobic process, or it will be a sequential process that involves few stages of aerobic conversion and few stages of anaerobic conversion. Now, if we compare aerobic and anaerobic types of bioremediation, then we will find that aerobic bioremediation reactions are far more rapid, far more efficient, and for that reason are to be chosen. But the problem is, when you are performing aerobic bioremediation, then air is to be provided, oxygen is to be provided. That is a bit of technically not feasible in the pollutant sites, and it makes the whole process expensive also. And if we see the anaerobic bioremediation, then yes, the process is a little bit slower, but anaerobic bioremediation is cheaper, is simple to perform, it doesn't demand any supply of gases. And for that reason, anaerobic bioremediation is the method of choice. The examples of anaerobic biodegradation includes DDT and endosulfan. These are at the end, at the summary, I would like to conclude that anaerobiosis, the growth of anaerobic organism, is the process that takes place on the earth since the evolution of the first organism. Anaerobic organisms are living all around us, and we need to learn how to grow these anaerobic organisms. We need to learn how to control these anaerobic organisms. Some of them are our friends, we can use them for fermentation. Some of them are our foes, which are harming us by causing anaerobic diseases. And our knowledge about growing them helps us. At the end, I would like to express my sincere, heartfelt gratitude to the whole technical and non-technical teams of BISEG, coordinator of Sandhan, Higher Education Commissionerate, Government of Gujarat, and my colleague and all the students who are making this endeavor possible. Thank you. Namaste.
Sandhan. All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.